The rain was ruthless that night, cold, sharp, and unforgiving. It washed over the iron gates of Daniel Whitmore's mansion like a warning from heaven itself. Daniel was seconds away from stepping into his chauffeured car when something unusual made him freeze. Two fragile figures lay collapsed on the pavement outside his gate, soaked to the bone, clinging to each other as if they were the only warmth left in the world. For a moment, Daniel thought his eyes were deceiving him. The city was full of strangers seeking shelter near wealthy homes, but something about the way the elderly man shielded the woman with his own trembling body pierced Daniel's heart. He had seen poverty before from a distance, through tinted windows. But this was different. "Stop the car," Daniel ordered abruptly. The driver hesitated. "Sir, it's dangerous. We don't know who they are." Daniel didn't respond. He was already walking toward the gate, rain soaking through his expensive coat. As he approached, he saw the woman's pale face and the man's weak attempts to keep her conscious. "Please," the old man whispered when he noticed Daniel. "My wife, she can't breathe properly." Her name was Margaret, his was Samuel Carter. Without another thought, Daniel instructed his staff to carry them inside. Inside the warmth of the mansion, chaos replaced silence. Doctors were called, blankets wrapped around frail shoulders. Hot tea trembled in delicate hands. Margaret suffered from severe pneumonia. Samuel had collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration. They had been evicted from their small apartment that morning after falling behind on rent. Their only son, Matthew, had died 3 years earlier in a construction accident. Since then, life had been an endless storm. Daniel stood in the hallway listening to Samuel's broken explanation. Every word felt like a quiet accusation. "We tried the shelters," Samuel said softly. "They were full. We didn't know where else to go. We just kept walking." Daniel felt something unfamiliar stir inside him, guilt. He built his empire through Whitmore Developments, a real estate company known for luxury towers and commercial projects. He was respected, admired, even envied. But as he glanced at Margaret fighting for breath in a guest room, he wondered how many affordable apartments his company had demolished to build something grander. The next morning, the storm had stopped, but the storm inside Daniel had just begun. Margaret's condition stabilized after medical treatment, but she remained weak. Samuel refused to leave her side. Daniel watched them quietly over the next few days. They were gentle with each other, whispering prayers before meals, thanking every servant who entered the room, apologizing for being a burden. A burden. The word haunted him. Daniel had grown up poor himself. His father, a factory worker, had died when Daniel was 16. His mother worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. He remembered nights of hunger and the humiliation of overdue notices. But once he became successful, he buried those memories beneath ambition. Seeing Samuel and Margaret felt like seeing his own parents in another lifetime. One evening, Daniel sat with them by the fireplace. "Why didn't you ask someone for help?" he asked gently. Samuel smiled faintly. "Pride is a strange thing, son. It keeps old bones standing even when they should rest." Margaret reached for Samuel's hand. "We trusted God would send someone." Her words hit Daniel like thunder. Over the following week, Daniel discovered more about their struggles. After their son's death, medical bills consumed their savings. Samuel's pension barely covered groceries. When rent increased, they simply couldn't keep up. The landlord had shown no mercy. Daniel felt anger rise within him, not just at the landlord, but at a system he himself had helped shape. For the first time in years, business meetings felt hollow. Luxury contracts felt meaningless. Then came another challenge. Margaret's pneumonia worsened unexpectedly. One night, she stopped breathing. Daniel personally drove them to the hospital in the pouring rain. Samuel prayed aloud in the back seat, his trembling voice filling the car with desperation. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter than ever before in his life. At the hospital, doctors worked tirelessly. Hours passed like centuries. Samuel wept quietly in the waiting room. Daniel sat beside him, unsure of what to say. "You don't owe us this," Samuel murmured. "You've already done more than enough." Daniel swallowed hard. "Maybe I'm only just beginning." Margaret survived the night, but the doctor warned that her recovery would be slow and expensive. Daniel made a decision that changed everything. He paid for the best medical care without hesitation, but he didn't stop there. He investigated the property where Samuel and Margaret had lived. It turned out Whitmore Developments had recently purchased that entire block for redevelopment. The eviction notices had come from his own company. The realization crushed him. He called an emergency board meeting. His executives were stunned when Daniel announced a halt on the demolition project. "We're redesigning it," he said firmly. "Half of the units will be affordable housing for seniors and low-income families." There was resistance. Profit margins would drop. Investors would question him. But Daniel didn't waver. "For years, we've built towers that touch the sky," he said. "Now we're building something that touches lives." News of the decision spread quickly. Media outlets praised the unexpected shift. Some criticized it as a publicity stunt. But Daniel knew the truth. It wasn't about reputation. It was about redemption. Months passed. Margaret slowly regained her strength. Samuel found part-time work at the community center Daniel helped fund in the renovated complex. They were given a bright, safe apartment overlooking a small garden. On moving day, Daniel visited them. Margaret stood by the window, sunlight warming her silver hair. Samuel placed a small wooden cross above the doorway. "You've given us more than a home," Margaret said softly. "You've given us dignity." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "You reminded me who I used to be." But the challenges weren't completely gone. Investors threatened to withdraw support. Profits dipped that quarter. Daniel faced harsh criticism from competitors. Yet something extraordinary happened. Residents of the new development formed a tight-knit community. Volunteers stepped forward. Donations poured in. Churches partnered with Whitmore Developments. What began as a risky decision became a movement. Daniel launched the Matthew Carter Initiative, named after Samuel and Margaret's late son. The program focused on providing affordable housing and emergency medical funds for elderly citizens in crisis. At the grand opening ceremony of the renovated complex, Samuel was invited to speak. He stood at the podium, his voice steadier than ever before. "We stood in the rain believing we were forgotten," he said. "But sometimes God sends help in ways we don't expect. Sometimes He sends a man who has forgotten his own story and reminds him." Tears filled many eyes, including Daniel. The mansion gates that once separated wealth from need no longer felt like barriers. Daniel began hosting monthly community dinners on his property. The walls that once protected him from the world now opened to it. One quiet evening, months later, Daniel stood alone in the same spot where he had first seen Samuel and Margaret collapsed in the rain. The pavement was dry now. The air was calm. He realized something profound. That night, he thought he had rescued two strangers. In truth, they had rescued him. From greed, from indifference, from forgetting where he came from. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel Whitmore understood that the greatest fortune a man could ever build was not measured in skyscrapers, but in the lives he lifted from the storm. In the end, it wasn't the rain that changed everything. It was the moment someone chose to step out.